and there are many, but one of the primary reasons that we meditate is to answer a really fundamental question. And that question is, can you find the thinker? Can we identify the thinker of thoughts? Sounds a little bit strange, right? Me, obviously. But that's an important question to answer, because when we believe the thoughts in our mind, then we suffer, right? Then we become prisoners to certain conditioning patterns and beliefs and negative core identities we hold. But when we question our thoughts, we free ourselves of those types of suffering, of psychological suffering. So, who is the thinker of the thought? Now, our bodies are, incredibly intelligent, right? You are breathing right now, and there's oxygen flowing in to your body and flowing out in CO2, and you're not actually doing any of that, right? It's just happening for you. It's just happening by itself. And that's because your body has a system called the pulmonary system that takes in oxygen, transforms it into the blood, and takes out CO2. It does it all for you, right? If you get into, let's say, like a dangerous situation, a sketchy situation, you get this adrenaline rush when you need it to, run away or defend yourself or whatever. And again, you're not responsible for that at all. It happened by itself, right? The stimulus triggered it, boom. And that's because your body has a system called the adrenal system, right? So we could go down the list of every single thing about your body is actually happening by itself. You don't actually even know how you do it, right? Like, I don't know how I'm doing this, but I can do it. So on the same token, your body has a system that creates thoughts. We call it ego. It's really just the body mind. You can think of it as the mind that comes with this body. You are that life presence. You are that formless source of life, of existence, that inhabits the body, that wears the body, that animates the body. But the body is a thing in and of itself, right? Because you really don't have any responsibility for it other than being able to, control it. But you don't even know how you're doing it. So on the same token, you don't even know what thoughts are going to appear 5 seconds from now, right? So how can you be responsible for that? How can you be the thinker if there never is a moment where you sit and go, I'd like to think about insecurity right now. I'm going to think an insecure thought. Oh man, I feel so awful. Like, has that ever happened in your life? Have you ever chosen to suffer? Of course not. So there is something else, some autonomous thing being responsible for these thoughts. So in meditation, having that recognition is one of the goals that we're going for. This is why we observe our thoughts, right? We become very silent, and the whole entire goal of meditation is not to think. Then what happens? Right? So that seeing should be a very happy, liberating, exciting recognition, because that is your awareness of your inherent freedom to see, I'm actually not a prisoner to my mind. All that's happening is some thoughts are there being churned up by the body mind that are being given or endowed with an identity as if they were an entity. And I think, that's me. But actually, it's just thoughts arising spontaneously. And if I can stay in that still place that is observing thoughts, then I don't get entangled with them. They don't pull me into their games, right? And so then I actually don't suffer from those thoughts. All of your suffering is created in your mind. There is no actual suffering out in the world coming into you. Your mind projects all of it. It's a mirror. So today I would like to spend a little bit of time doing a thought experiment, and then we're going to spend a lot of time in stillness today. I'm not even going to talk or guide anything. I'm going to give you guys a lot of time to deep dive into this. Let's suppose that you're walking down a road or a path at night, and you see a snake in the middle of the path, big snake, and you've frozen in your tracks. and you sit there and go, oh gosh, how am I going to get around this huge snake? Well, let's suppose that the snake you're seeing is actually a tree branch that fell on the road, but in the moonlight, in the darkness, it looks like a snake to you, and you're totally convinced it's a snake. So just practically speaking, in that scenario, how would you learn it's just a stick and not a snake? Practically speaking.
Throw a rock at it, see if it moves.
What's that? Throw a rock at it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's one answer.
I think just taking a chance of faith, just going and like cautiously approaching it and just kind of dancing around it.
Bingo. You got to approach it, right? You got to come up to it and investigate it. And then you see, oh, it's just a snake, right? And that's the nature of the mind, is that nobody can escape from the illusions the mind creates unless they look at them. Because not looking is how illusions are protected, right? The ego thrives on your unconsciousness of it. The ego can only be an unconscious movement because the moment you're aware of it, it loses its power. So here's our thought experiment for today. Let's suppose that you're coming over to my house and I open the door and I greet you and say, welcome, you're welcome to come in, but I just ask a few things first. I would like you to first take your shoes off, please. Leave your shoes at the door. And so you take your shoes off and you leave them by the door. And I say, thank you. One other thing though, no hats allowed in my house. Please take your hat off. So you take your hat off, leave it at the door. And then I say, okay, just one last thing. Before you come in, I would like you to leave your mind outside. No thoughts, no identities, no attachments, no conclusions, definitions, no concepts, none of this chatter stuff. Leave all that outside, please. And then you're welcome to come in. I promise you all of those things will be still waiting for you when you get back. So imagine yourself doing that. Just emptying everything. Emptying meaning simply disidentifying, disconnecting from. If something appears, that's fine. Allow it to be there. But you remain in the stillness, in the space that is beyond the mind. So now that you're at this place, let's do a little investigation. What is still here? What is still with you right now? Without the mind, without thoughts, no attachments. How can we describe what is left? We could say, it feels like a deep stillness. It is very aware, but it's not thinking. It's always watching. Everything is actually reporting to this. Everything is fighting for this attention. It looks without any need to judge or interpret what it's seeing. Because it already knows. It sees without collecting. It moves around, but it doesn't pick anything up. It's always free and still like space. So freedom really comes when you allow yourself the grace to be empty, to remain as you are. Before an identity appeared, before you attached yourself to something, what was there? So suddenly it is felt, It is experienced, not as a concept, but as a real living truth. It is experienced that behind the thinking mind, there is a stillness, a silence, a transcendent dimension. And it doesn't have any problems. It doesn't give itself to anything. It is already perfect and free. And can I honestly say that I am separate from that? So let's go into now a long period of silence. And during this period of silence, I just want you to do one thing. And that is to set a firm intention, a firm desire. I do not want to think a thought right now. Just have that be your intention, to be in stillness. And just watch and see how long it takes before a few visitors come to audition for your attention. And the moment you recognize, and this is really the goal of today's meditation, the moment that you recognize, I did not choose to think that thought. That seeing, that aha moment where that clicks for you, just let that be a very liberating, joyful realization that I am not the thinker. The idea that thoughts and the thinker of them are separate is an illusion of the ego to trick me into giving it my attention, to take responsibility for the thoughts that the mind is thinking. It's just another system of the body. And it's getting programmed by conditioning and traumas and pain and memories, circumstances. And it is just responding according to that, according to the past, according to defense mode, survival mode. That's what it is designed to do. And it plays some function, and we are thankful for it, but we do not have to give our entire sense of self to it. Because when we do, we suffer everything that it suffers. And the more we see with our own eyes that I am something beyond thought, I am that inherent freedom in which all thoughts arise. The more we see that with our own experience, the more and more free and empowered and at peace we become. So during this period of silence, when you make that recognition, as often as you make it, that I did not choose to think this thought, I want you to just repeat the simple mantra, I feel the peace of God within me now.